So today we're going to be doing the first video of 2025 horror movies that you might have missed, where I like to highlight smaller releases or more independent movies that did not get a theatrical release. Now, this one's a little bit different. This year, I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit different with this series because I normally feature 4 movies per video, and I normally do 4 videos per year, so like quarterly. But I'm going to be honest with you, this year's a little bit more slim pickings, at least so far. I still try to find and watch the smaller movies or the more independent movies that are still worth your time. So given my history of, doing this for so long, I can kind of read if a movie is going to be decent enough to highlight on the channel. And I just like to put good movies on your radar, the ones that you literally missed and were overshadowed by larger releases. And I have to say, even major horror movie releases this year have been slightly disappointing so far. I think the year as a whole will be pretty good because we do have some bigger releases in the middle and at the end of the year that I think are going to be so solid and, standouts. But so far, the major releases have just been a little disappointing. That's another discussion for another day. Today, we're going to be focusing on 3 movies. I watched 3 smaller movies to recommend to you and to highlight in today's video, and I might just make that a pattern. And maybe there'll only be 3 videos this year highlighting smaller movies. Who knows? I'm just going with what is out there. And this is what I found and what I watched. So here we are. Like I said, it's the year of the show for me. I'm watching so many shows. And yes, half of them are reality TV. Okay, I'm just going to be honest with you, which I am actually going to talk about at the end of the year. I'm going to rank all the TV shows I watched, including reality TV. Anyway, now ironically, all of these movies in today's video are streaming on Shudder, but I know not all streaming services are created equally across the globe, but luckily I'm working with NordVPN on today's video. And that'll kind of open you up to have more access to more streaming of horror TV shows and horror movies, no matter where you are. Now, NordVPN also protects all of your devices from cyber attacks, things like hacking and malware and password attacks, and they have a feature called threat protection that is always running in the background, even if you're not directly connected to a VPN server, so you're always going to be protected no matter where you are. Now, that feature is great in and of itself. I use a VPN all the time for that reason, just so I know my devices are always safe and protected. But my favorite feature of a VPN is, of course, blocking your IP address so you're able to access the entire world's spectrum of streaming. And I think my viewers especially can take advantage of a feature like this, so you can have access to every single country's streaming service selection. All you have to do is click anywhere on the map that you want to connect to, and you will automatically have access to all of their streaming content. Plus, one account from NordVPN can protect all of your devices, including your phone, laptop. If you want to take it to a coffee shop, it'll protect you from attacks outside of the home. So make sure to go to nordvpn.com/PossessedbyHorror to get the exclusive deal, plus a huge discount and 4 bonus months for free. It is completely risk-free with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. So I'm going to go in order of when these movies were released. So the first movie we're going to cover today was released back in January, and that is Grafted. An ambitious yet socially inexperienced exchange student strives to elevate her status in pursuit of popularity. Now, the story in itself isn't completely original. We've kind of seen this coming-of-age tale of a socially awkward, kind of nerdy girl trying to fit in with the popular girls, especially this one where her older sister is popular and she's just trying to fit in with her friends. And of course, she's excluded, harassed, made fun of, laughed at. She has a couple physical differences that people bully her for, basically, and then she, eventually sets out for revenge. So we've seen this kind of story play out before, and I personally really like the teen drama aspect and that coming of age story. I enjoy that every single time. It's something that I really like. I like reading YA as well, but it is a little bit heavy-handed sometimes, like the teen drama side of this movie. So do bear that in mind. It's probably not going to be for everyone, but I really like that they lead into the drama a little bit more at times because it helps to build our empathy for Wei and, connect to her character a little bit more and understand her a little bit more, even if she, you know, has some questionable motives and behaviors, you know. Now, this definitely at times reminded me of The Substance, and I hesitate in saying that if you liked The Substance, you would automatically like Grafted, but they are very similar. The body horror is really good, and it is similar. It is similar. Now, obviously, this movie isn't going to be as fantastic as The Substance. I think The Substance is like a perfect movie, so, you know, I want to say it's safe to say, but do go into it knowing that this is like a lower budget version and more of the teen drama, so like it is different, but there are similarities that I think if you like the style of The Substance and the body horror aspect, that you'd probably enjoy some elements of Grafted. And this is on the lower budget side, and so that's, you know, what you've probably come to expect from these videos as I highlight the smaller movies. And this one you can definitely kind of feel that. In general, I think the characters were effective enough, they were convincing enough, but that is kind of where you see a lot of these movies kind of struggle a little bit with the lower budget side of things. I do feel like this story in particular with Grafted, it didn't know exactly how to end it because I think it kind of loses itself a little bit along the way and isn't as good. I think it has a really strong hook. That opening scene and that body horror is so good, and then it kind of fizzles out for a little while, and then it builds that tension again, but then it doesn't really like follow through all the way. It's not as like punchy. I think you can tell they had like a really strong concept without knowing how to make it a really strong ending. Like the body horror of this was really good. I liked the horror elements. I wouldn't say this movie is scary. You know, The Substance isn't necessarily scary, but it's still considered a horror movie. It's just not scary in the traditional sense. This is similar in that sense. And maybe this movie would have worked better if it was like a short or even a book, I think, because there are just some things that are a little bit unbelievable along the way. We lose a little bit of that sense of reality because it just ends up being unbelievable. And granted, it's a movie, okay? You can say the same thing about The Substance. Like, obviously, it's like unbelievable that it would go that far without people saying anything, or like the side characters have to be pretty ignorant in order for these kind of stories to work. And so that's the same thing with Grafted. So you have to have a little suspension of disbelief, like most movies. So just keep that in mind. But overall, I love the concept of this movie a lot, and I had a really fun time with it, even if it's not like a perfect movie by any means. I think it's a fun movie and good body horror. So if you like The Substance, watch Grafted. Next up, we have The Rule of Jenny Penn. I did not think this movie would be disturbing, but here we are. Maybe it won't be for you, but it really was for me. We'll get into that. Recovering from a stroke at an assisted living facility, a judge encounters a psychopathic patient who uses a hand puppet to abuse fellow residents. So this stars Geoffrey Rush as the judge, stroke survivor, and John Lithgow as the psychopath, with the little puppet of Jenny Penn. I love the overall idea and story of this movie. I saw the trailer and like, you know, the teasers for it earlier on before it was released in March, and I thought it was really creative. I feel like we don't see a lot of movies taking place at an assisted living facility, and that is an untapped territory for horror, and they did it so well in The Rule of Jenny Penn. Or even just like stories around the elderly in and of itself. I think, you know, we have movies like that. It's obviously, I'm not saying it's never been done, but I feel like it's not explored as much as other subjects. Like we do the children a lot and teens, but let's go more into the elderly. You know, I feel like there's a lot that you can say with a movie like that. I just think it's a very great location for a horror movie to take place in. Like a facility with a bunch of elderly. You kind of have that concept of like losing oneself and being isolated, and I think that is the perfect setup for a horror movie. Now, let's talk about The Rule of Jenny Penn though as a movie. This made me so uncomfortable, and I wasn't expecting that. From the trailers, I just thought it would be John Lithgow being a little creepy guy, and he's obviously not well, and he's using this doll to like harass people, but I didn't think it would go to the level of harassment that it did. And this is definitely not a movie I'll ever watch again. Like, it made me feel weird in a non-entertaining way, you know? It's a good movie. In fact, I will go so far as to say it's the best movie in this video that I'm going to talk about, and the most effective and well done. But I didn't like my experience of it. because it made me feel too weird. Sometimes we can watch movies that give us like an unpleasant experience, but we can still recognize that they did what they set out to do. You know, movies like Climax or Mother, to me, very anxiety inducing, but they are very good movies at the end of the day. And this kind of falls into that ballpark where I was uncomfy and wasn't necessarily having a good time, but that's kind of the point of the movie. For me, one of the things that is a soft spot and that made it more uncomfortable for me personally was seeing just the elderly in a home and just watching the elderly, you know, with my parents, and everything I've been dealing with that in that regard. It's kind of a sad thing for me. So that alone was really difficult to watch, because I know that's reality, and it's hard. It's a hard stage of life at the end. Now, the other major reason why this was so uncomfortable of a watch for me and like difficult for me to get through was Dave Creeley, the character that John Lithgow plays. He's creepy and weird, and he just did it so well and so believably that it made me so uncomfortable. I mean, I should point out that there is some SA in this, in some of the ways that he harasses the people, the other elderly in the home. And I didn't expect that, and I was nervous at how far it was gonna go. It wasn't too bad, it wasn't too far, but there is some assault happening, you know? And the director, John Ashcroft, said that this movie is really about tyranny and the rise of a dictator in the least likely of places. And so that's what he was going for with his character. And yeah, I mean, it was chaos. Now, this movie does kind of lose steam about 3/4 of the way in, I would say. I was really engaged, although uncomfortable, for at least like half of the movie. And then it kind of lost me a little bit. I think it gets a little bit slow, a little bit more drama stuff happening. And I also wasn't a huge fan of like the climax of the movie. I felt like I was very unsatisfied with the ending of this movie. And again, this is one of those movies, like kind of like Grafted, you have to have some layer of disbelief going on in order to, you know, wrap your head around the plot, because some man is just going around causing, you know, he's terrorizing all these people, and there's no cameras or phones or anything, you know, like there's got to be a little suspension of disbelief, a little bit of plot holes here and there in the story, especially once we did kind of like have the main reveal about halfway through. I really liked that reveal. I think that added so much to the story. So there is, you know, more to it than just what you hear about and like the description of the movie. And I really liked that. I kind of liked the twist, if you will, of the movie. Like I said, it is the best movie in this video that I'm going to talk about, though. The best executed movie anyway. I think it had the highest budget of the movies in this video, and you could tell. But in general, I think it just had the best story and like the most original concept in this video of like compared to the other movies I'm talking about. And I was really, really impressed by all of the performances. They were so believable, a little bit too believable, if you ask me. And by far, the reason to watch this movie would be the two leads, because they carried this movie and they made it so good. Also, the staff in the movie, the people who portrayed the staff were actually trained by people who work in these kinds of facilities. And so this movie is pretty accurate to how they like speak to the elderly and the patients and how they work with them. Again, not a particularly scary movie. It's not the scariest movie in this video. I reserved that for the last movie. But there are definitely parts that'll make you feel uncomfy. So if that's what you're looking for and you really want like good performances and like a decent story, I was actually pleasantly surprised by The Rule of Jenny Penn. So I do recommend it, but again, I'll never watch it again. Just made me weird. Made me feel weird and very unsettled. Lastly, for this video, we're going to talk about 825 Forest Road. This was released on April 4th. Chuck Wilson hopes to start a new life after a family tragedy when he moves to the town of Ashland Falls with his wife Maria and his little sister Elizabeth, but he quickly discovers that the town has a dark secret. Now, I was really excited about this when I heard about it because it's directed by Stephen Cognetti, who did the Hell House movies, and he always does like supernatural, paranormal stuff, and that is my jam, as you know. This is not found footage, though, so if you're not a fan of found footage, don't worry, it's not. I really liked the overall idea of like the chapters in this movie. I really like when books and movies do different perspectives. It's like one of my favorite things. And one day I hope to write a book that switches perspectives because I think it's just so fun. It makes it fast paced. This one, we get 3 perspectives. We get Chuck Wilson, his wife, and his sister. So I thought that was interesting. I just like that way of storytelling. I find it to be really effective. The worst part about this movie, I hate to say, is the performances. I was not into that. I think that the story in general kind of read a little bit basic. I mean, it's a tale as old as time. A family moves into an old house and there's a ghost running around and the town has like a weird curse on it. Like we've seen that before, and granted, it's a formula I don't really tire of if it's done well, because I love supernatural horror, anything, and I feel like we're getting less and less supernatural horror as time goes on, and it's more slim pickings when it comes to that subgenre. Like I think it's dying out a little bit, and I think maybe 825 Forest Road was like a little bit slow and possibly too long for what the story was. I think they could have cleaned it up a little bit and shortened it a little bit, added a little bit more horror and tension in there, and it would have been pretty good. And I don't necessarily want to put it into a box, but it is, a supernatural story with tropey elements. It's stuff we've seen before, kind of, including the horror elements themselves. And it ends up trying to be a little bit more atmospheric than it needs to be, and it didn't read as effective for me. That being said, there are definitely still redeeming qualities about this movie. Now, if you know my taste in horror at all and what I like in horror movies, and you also like that, if we shared that taste, then you would like the horror elements in this movie. That was my favorite part. Anytime the horror was on screen, I was cheering. I loved it. Visually, I thought it was really good. I mean, Stephen Cognetti has a thing for like mannequins in the background silhouettes. That was effective, let me tell you. I think that made this movie really scary. And, he always has like the clown mannequin in the Hell House movies. And this one, it's like a woman mannequin. Creepy. Creepy, definitely. And this movie had the most tension by far out of any of the movies in this video. And definitely the scariest for me. Not the best movie, not the best performances, but the scariest. If you want like a horror movie to watch in the pitch black, that'll probably freak you out. If you are scared of supernatural things, then this one would probably scare you. I just wish the horror elements were in a stronger movie with a stronger story and a little bit more of an originality. It is worth a watch if you can look past the performances and kind of the messy, slower script and you stick with it. The horror in the end is definitely worth it. So I'm already taking note of releases that are coming up for part 2 of this video. I have 3 already written down. They haven't come out yet, but once they do, I will be doing another part to this video like usual. I usually like to highlight as many movies as I can, but like I said, I'm bringing you the good ones, or the ones that I think are worth your time. I don't want to waste your time on bad movies. And some will argue that these are bad. That's fine, but this is for a collective audience. Some will find value in these movies, and I liked all 3 of them. But I am really excited for the next round of this because we have some good movie. Well, I hope they're good, but I very anticipating, like The Ugly Stepsister. Cannot wait. It's limited theaters, so I don't really have that one showing around me, but I can't wait to see it and talk about it in part 2 of this video. Let me know if there are other horror movie releases that are on the smaller side or like independently released that you have seen lately that you think are really good and worth everyone's time, and we can share some more in the comments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you soon.